Hey, it's Andre Gower from the Monster Squad, and it's Halloween. And if you're watching 80s Life with Kurt Crucial, you're in the goddamn club.
Today, we're going to be taking a look at the 1987 cult classic, The Monster Squad. A little bit of an underrated movie, and if you've never seen it, imagine the Goonies mixed with classic monsters. And one of my favorite things about this movie is all of the late 80s fashion, and I'll be pointing some of that out as we go. Now, it's kind of hard to get all these locations because a lot of them have been torn down, and also a lot of the movie was filmed on backlots. There's at least 3 backlots that were used, Warner Brothers, Warner Ranch, and Universal Studios. But today I'm gonna do my best to show you where everything was and where some of it still is. So let's go see what we can find. Now this is it right here, the opening shot of present day. Present day meaning 1987. Now this is Richland Avenue Elementary School in Santa Monica, and this is where Sean, Patrick, and Horace all went to school. And you can see it looks a little bit different. They've extended the right side of the building out a few feet, and they've added a wheelchair ramp on the left side of the building. But other than that, it looks pretty similar to how it did back in 1987. Now these right here were the doors that all of the kids were coming out of. And then right over here, there was a bicycle rack that may or may not have actually been here in real life. Now, as we see all of the kids pouring out of these doors, the camera then focuses on this window because supposedly on the other side of this window, Patrick and Sean are sitting in the principal's office. And after they leave the principal's office, they stop by their classroom, and then they're walking down the hall towards the exit. Notice those windows above the double doors? This is it right here. It's kind of hard to see because the doors are open and there's all that light coming in, but those are the same windows. Kind of get a better shot as we get closer to the end of the hall. Horace is walking across the schoolyard, minding his own business, enjoying a Snickers bar, when he's approached by none other than Wayne Arnold. Wayne, or EJ in Monster Squad, would have been standing right here in front of this tree. You could also see all those windows and doors behind him.
80s fashion.
Now notice that awesome TNC surf shirt that Horace is wearing. It's actually this one right here. So EJ knocks the Snickers bar out of Horace's hand, steps on it, knocks him down, and begins to wail on him. And they were on the ground right here in front of these lunch tables. Luckily, right about then, Rudy rides up to save the day. And have you ever noticed Rudy's shoes? I thought he was supposed to be the cool guy. Those shoes definitely don't match the rest of his outfit. Anyways, he would have been sitting right here on his bike with these buildings behind him. Rudy then makes EJ pick up the Snickers bar and eat it, while Horace watches in delight. And all of that takes place right here in the yard of Richland Avenue Elementary School, right here next to this tree. I'm so glad that all of this still looks the same. Sean and Patrick are walking home after school talking about the Wolfman, and Phoebe is walking down this sidewalk. Now there was no large hedge here at the time, so it looks a little bit different, but this is where Phoebe was walking, and Sean and Patrick continue down the sidewalk arguing about the Wolfman, and Phoebe comes around the corner and catches up with them. And behind Sean and Patrick, you can see a tree that kind of splits off into 2. Now it's still here, it's just covered by this large hedge, but if you step back, you can kind of see the tree. Okay, now here's where they do a little bit of that camera magic. So the boys are walking right here down Georgina Avenue, and Phoebe is coming down 12th Street. Now they continue down Georgina Avenue, and a few moments later, they come upon the scary German guy's house. But that house is actually right down here on 12th Street, so Phoebe would have actually walked right past it. So as they're walking down the sidewalk, Phoebe stops in front of a chain link fence and she comments, "This is where the scary German guy lives." And I hate to tell you, But this is the scary German guy's house. Obviously, that house has since been torn down and a new one has been built in its place. And unfortunately, a lot of the houses around here have been torn down and new ones have been built. Now the house next door, that one's still the same, and you can see the roof of that house a couple of times in the movie. It's now kind of covered by a tree, but it is the same house, the roof is still the same, and the house is across the street. When the camera is in the yard looking at Phoebe standing in front of the fence, you can see at least two houses across the street, and the one on the right, that's a completely different house. But the one on the left side, that's the same house, and you can see a bit of that window. So this is where Rudy's sitting on his bike while the other kids discuss whether or not he would be a good fit for the club. And this is the tree that you see behind him. It's just now covered. And that other tree that you see in front of him, that's been torn out since the movie was made. And you can also see that driveway across the street. But other than that, everything else has changed. All of the houses that you see behind him, those have all changed. And where Rudy's sitting is actually right in front of the house that's right next door to the scary German guy's house. In this next scene, we see a couple of pilots discussing the cargo that they're transporting, which includes Frankenstein's monster. They hear a noise in the back of the plane, and one of the pilots goes to investigate. That's when he encounters Dracula. The pilot then opens a trap door, which causes the box containing Frankenstein's monster to fall from the plane into a lagoon down below. Now, I'm almost positive that this lagoon is located in the jungle set at Warner Brothers Studios. Now, I talked to Andre Gower about it, and he couldn't remember if it was Warner Brothers or Universal, but he did confirm that it was one of the two studios. He also said that it was in an area that used to butt up to a western town, and in fact, the jungle set at Warner Brothers butts up to what used to be Laramie Street, which was the western town. Now we get an even better shot of the lagoon a little bit later in the movie when all of the monsters meet up here and Dracula brings Frankenstein's monster back to life. And to me, this looks just like the lagoon at Warner Brothers, so again, I'm almost positive that's where this was filmed. So right now, I'm standing in Stevenson Ranch, California, a small town just a couple miles away from Six Flags Magic Mountain. And in the 1980s, it didn't look like this around here. It's now full of housing developments and shopping centers. But in the 1980s, this was just all land. You didn't have all of these shopping centers and housing developments. And sometime around 1987, they found a piece of land that had a little body of water and a nice tree next to it. And they built the exteriors of the Monster Squad treehouse. Now the interiors, those were filmed on a soundstage, but the exteriors were filmed right here in Stevenson Ranch. Sean's dad gets called down to the museum to investigate the disappearance of a 2,000-year-old dead guy. That was filmed right here inside of the Los Angeles Natural History Museum. So when the mummy escapes the museum and you see him slowly moving down the street, that was actually filmed right here behind me, directly behind the Natural History Museum. We first see the mummy crossing this path and you can see this brick wall with the pillar on the end. Then as he moves a little bit further down the sidewalk, you can see this building, which still looks the same. However, that tree appears to have been removed and replaced with a new tree. But look at the brick wall, it still looks exactly the same. The camera then pans a little bit to the right and you can see more of the wall and all of these trees. And then as the camera continues to pan, that's when you see the coroner van coming down the street with lights and sirens blaring. Now, a couple of really quick scenes were filmed here at Universal Studios on what's now Wisteria Lane, but back then it was Colonial Street. So we see the crime scene after the Wolfman kills the van driver, and that very short scene was filmed on Colonial Street, down at the end on the right side if you're coming in. But all of those buildings have since been torn down, and there's now just one house sitting in that area. Now, directly across from where that crime scene was, used to be another very familiar Monster Squad location. This was the mansion, or Dracula's hideout. But that mansion has also since been torn down, and there's now nothing there. There's just a fence. Right here, this is where Dracula's mansion was. And we see that mansion a few times throughout the movie. Probably the best shots of it are when the squad's outside with Frankenstein's monster and they're getting ready to head in. Now, when they come back to talk to the German guy, they're standing right here in front of this tree. And this is a pretty recognizable tree because it has kind of a twisty shape. It almost looks like a cinnamon twist from Taco Bell. Yeah, they're standing right here, and then they walk a little bit closer to the house, and one of them comments, "How do you say, 'please don't murder me' in German?" And that's when the German guy sneaks up behind him and answers their question.
80s fashion.
Horace is wearing yet another TNC surf shirt, this time with the pink chest emblem. Unfortunately, we never do get to see the back design because he's wearing that button-up shirt over it. Now, as an added bonus, in this scene, Patrick is wearing a Gotcha sweatshirt. TNC Surf and Gotcha, two brands that definitely represent Southern California in the 1980s. Now, I know that the joke right after that scene with the pie is a little bit cheesy, but I don't know, it just cracks me up.
Time is almost up. It's your last chance for pie.
Now, obviously, I wish that the scary German guy's house was still here. That was a very recognizable house, but like I said, it was torn down and a new house was built in its place. I wonder if these people have any pie. Did you ever notice in that scene that they're eating pie and drinking Pepsi? I mean, talk about a sugar overload, but we didn't care about how much sugar we ate when we were that young. I mean, I remember drinking Jolt Cola and not feeling anything because I consumed so much sugar on a regular basis. This is the alley that the boys are walking down while they're trying to come up with a plan, and this is actually right behind the German guy's house. And while they're walking down this alley, you can see a white wooden fence, which up until just recently would have been right here, but it's recently been torn down because they're building a new structure. So there's not a lot that's recognizable here. You can see this wall, and also actually that section of wall right there, which would have been just before the white fence, that's still here. You can see that where it gets lower right there. That can be seen if you look really close. And then as they get a little bit further, you can see a garage behind them, which is actually right here. It's still here, but it's now covered by this large shrub. Now for this next scene, they're actually using two locations. When the boys are standing in front of the treehouse, which is supposed to be behind Sean's house, they're here in Stevenson Ranch. But then Phoebe comes running into the backyard, and they're now in Burbank, California, on the Warner Brothers Ranch. Now sadly, and this is actually devastating, but sadly, they're in the process of tearing down the Warner Brothers Ranch. And right now, this is all that's left of Sean's house. You can see part of the house is already gone. The roof is gone. You can kind of match up some of the windows and doors in the back of the house. But right here, this would have been the backyard, and this would have been where Phoebe was standing. Now, when the boys see Frankenstein's monster for the first time, they're in Stevenson Ranch. They then freak out and run into the backyard, and they're now in Burbank on the Warner Brothers Ranch. The camera then cuts to Frankenstein's monster and Phoebe standing in front of the treehouse, and they're now back here in Stevenson Ranch. It's just cutting back and forth. They put it all together and they make it look like one location. Movie magic. During the montage, the boys are riding their bikes down the street, and they're riding down 12th Street away from Margarita Avenue. And actually the scary German guy's house is right down there. They would have rode right past it. Now, just like everything else around here, not too much is recognizable, but there are a couple of things that you can see in that scene that are still here. First of all, these pillars right here can be seen. And then there's also a house that you can see on the left side. You can't really see it from here because it's now pretty well covered by these trees. But if we walk down to the end of the block, there's that house. Another thing that happens during that montage is Rudy collecting the arrows from the archery range. That was filmed at Warner Brothers Studios on this grassy area, which is actually right across from where the finale of the movie takes place. And finally, during that montage, we see Rudy picking up his pictures from the Fox Photo 1 Hour Lab. Now, that was located here on the Warner Brothers lot, and you'll see this again during the finale of the movie. Now, although the storefront has changed a bit, some of that fake brickwork around the storefront is still recognizable. Phil's, the restaurant that Patrick and Rudy are waiting at with Patrick's sister, is actually the gas station set at the Warner Brothers Ranch. Unfortunately, the gas station was demolished earlier this month, along with the rest of the Warner Ranch. Now, after the squad comes out of Dracula's mansion, they're running through the woods and they meet up with Phoebe and the scary German guy, and that was definitely filmed in the jungle set at Warner Brothers, so that's just a little bit more proof that that's also where they filmed the Lagoon scene. So Sean's dad goes racing home, and as I already mentioned, Sean's house was located on the Warner Brothers Ranch. So as his dad's coming down the street, you can see some tall buildings in the background off in the distance, and that was these buildings right here, located on the end of Blondie Street. So Sean's dad pulls up and gets out of the car and finds Dracula standing in front of his house. Now, this right here was Sean's house, and it's more famously known as the Partridge family home. But like I already mentioned, there's really not much left of this house, and probably by the time this video is posted, it'll be completely torn down. The rest of the movie was filmed at Warner Brothers Studios in Town Square. So now I'm just gonna shut up and let the footage do the talking.
We're the Monster Squad.
Alright, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
My name is Horace.